What's brewing in Burkina Faso? The country's army-appointed leader tells the AU to back off. We'll explain. Election 2014 fallout. How a Republican victory complicates Obama's foreign policy. And in Malawi, empowering the youth through the power of radio. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Lenore Moudou. Vincent McCurry is on assignment. This is Africa 54. We start in Burkina Faso, where the country's interim leader says he won't be rushed. Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida is telling the African Union the country needs more time to transition to a new civilian-led government. Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida said Thursday a council of elders will select what he called an eminent civilian personality to lead the transition government before elections next November. He said the process will not be rushed by international pressure or the growing unrest within the country since the military seized power a week ago.
We are not afraid about sanction. We are much more caring about stability, peace for Burkina people. Sanction is not really our matter at this time.
Zida said the heads of state have asked politicians, religious leaders and civil society groups to each name 3 candidates to lead a transitional government. The agreement on a transitional government was reached with the help of the presidents of Ghana, Nigeria and Senegal, who arrived Wednesday in the capital, Ouagadougou.
And so, yes, we are upset with our brothers about what happened and our sisters, but it is important for us to also involve them so that whatever we agree will be one that is agreed to by all society. We cannot take unilateral decisions and say that any transitional government that we establish is a transitional government of a group of Burkina society, excluding others.
The paused President Blaise Compaoré, whose resignation Friday ended a 27-year rule in Burkina Faso, is now in Côte d'Ivoire and is said to be in good spirits. He fled to Ivory Coast after marchers stormed Parliament and set the building on fire. They were protesting a constitutional amendment that would have allowed Mr. Compaoré to run for another term. Amid the ongoing violence in Nigeria's northeast, 2,400 children have enrolled in the federal government's Safe School initiative. It's part of an ongoing effort to protect schools from Boko Haram. We have a report from Channels TV, our partner in Nigeria.
More than 6 months have elapsed since the news of the abduction of over 200 Chibok schoolgirls first emerged. Weeks after, Nigeria became submerged in a new kind of crisis. Many school children in the affected areas were not able to go to school for fear of more terrorist attacks. As a follow-up to the federal government's launch of the Safe School initiative on June 17, the president inaugurated a steering committee chaired by the coordinating Minister of the Economy and Minister of Finance, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Parents who have said that they would like their children from JSS 1 and above to SS3 to go to schools, unity schools in other parts of the country, north and elsewhere, have made themselves known. We have identified 800 students per state for a total of 2,400 students. There are about 42 schools or so that will receive them. The principals and everybody, they've been sensitized, and we are going to commence the launch of this immediately. The students will go on full scholarship. All their needs will be provided.
The federal government is determined that this initiative would bring hope for many of these parents and children in the violence-torn areas whose sense of safety have been shattered.
We have discussed on this issue that some facilities are going to be provided again in the schools, because mind you that the students that are initially in those schools have left the school for the IDPs to be in the schools. So this program is going to include adding some facilities to those students so that they can go back to schools.
The security situation is challenging, but the security sector is working extremely hard to bring stability back to that region, and I think it's through this type of effort that we send the message that the country is united and can in fact work together with its partners domestically, internationally, to address this big challenge of insurgency.
Well, this latest action by the government marks another turning point for the numerous children most affected by terrorist activities. While the world, however, continues to observe how the country tackles other issues, including the spate of abduction in the country. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
U.S. military officials say airstrikes hit a dangerous group of Islamic militants who were plotting terror attacks. The SUV, said to be carrying 5 members of the Khorasan group, was struck Wednesday near the Syrian town of Samarda. Amateur video purports to show the aftermath. A Pentagon source says the intended target was a French-born convert, David Drugeon, Al-Qaeda's master bomb maker. So far, no confirmation that Drugeon was killed. A U.S. Navy commando has come forward saying he's the one who shot and killed Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden in 2011. Robert O'Neill is telling U.S. news organization he fired 3 shots at bin Laden at his compound in Pakistan. O'Neill says the first SEAL to reach bin Laden fired and missed. Then he spotted bin Laden through his night vision scope. O'Neill is now retired from the military after 16 years. Republican victors of Tuesday's U.S. elections are scheduled to break bread with President Barack Obama on Friday. But when they take control of the Senate in January, experts say it will complicate Mr. Obama's foreign policy initiatives. VOA's Al Persin reports from London.
This man, Senator Mitch McConnell, will become Senate Majority Leader, one of the most powerful positions in Washington. President Obama will still control U.S. foreign policy, but with the Republican majority in the Senate, it will be more difficult to present a united front to the world, says Jacob Parakilas, deputy head of the USA program at London's Chatham House.
The perception of the president as dictating the agenda and the Senate following his directives is going to give way to a story where the president and the Senate will be fighting over a possible Iran deal, additional sanctions on Russia, the strategy to fight the Islamic State, and a variety of other issues.
When these new Republican senators take office, they'll have a voice on international issues, and their inclination will be to oppose the president. But if serious national security issues come up, they'll likely support him, says Johannes Timm, speaking via Skype from the German Institute for International and Security Affairs in Berlin.
If the president has to deal with a crisis, or if he has to take a more assertive stance, then he can rely on getting the support from the Republicans. First of all, because the Republicans call for a more assertive approach, so they're not going to be the ones holding him back. And second, because in serious crises, we've always witnessed the sort of rally around the flag effect.
Timm says the Republicans are likely to be supportive on some issues of importance to Europeans, including standing up to Russia and boosting transatlantic trade. But he says they could block President Obama's efforts to work with European leaders on climate change. One key issue is the nuclear talks with Iran, which face a deadline in less than 3 weeks. Analysts say now there could be more pressure to reach an agreement and have it approved by the current Democrat-controlled Senate before the end of the year. Otherwise, says Jacob Parakilas, it will be more difficult for the president to get the Republican-controlled Senate to reduce sanctions on Iran as part of any accord.
He will definitely be pushed to be tougher, more or less across the board.
And that could also include his response to Russia's more aggressive foreign policy in Ukraine and elsewhere, and the fight against Islamic State militants in Syria and Iraq. Al Pessin, VOA News, London.
President Obama's diplomatic power will be put to the test when he travels to Asia Sunday on a week-long visit aimed at improving relations with China and boosting American exports. We get more on that from VOA's White House correspondent, Luis Ramirez.
The visit comes at an awkward time for President Obama. China, with its rapid economic rise and its growing military capabilities in the Pacific, is poised to further challenge the U.S. leader, now weakened by elections. Days before leaving for an Asian economic summit in Beijing and facing a new Congress dominated by Republicans, Mr. Obama told reporters one of his missions in Asia is to boost American exports to create jobs at home.
We can also work together to grow our exports and open new markets for our manufacturers to sell more American-made goods to the rest of the world. And that's something I'll be focused on when I travel to Asia next week.
But pushing that agenda with the Chinese will not be easy. Before he arrived in Beijing, there were signs of the credibility challenge that awaits the U.S. president. An official Chinese newspaper said in a disparaging manner that his party's election losses and diminishing mandate are a consequence of Mr. Obama's failures, describing him also as insipid and banal. Analysts say that for the president, China, with its expanding military and its maritime claims in the East and South China Seas, represents the biggest security challenge as far as state actors go. Last year in California, President Obama and Chinese leader Xi Jinping agreed they need a new model of relations between the existing power and the one that's rising. Tom Donilon, a former national security advisor to Mr. Obama, says the two leaders' upcoming meeting is crucial.
In my judgment, it's the most important bilateral meeting the president will have this year.
But former U.S. diplomat Robert Daley expects no more than polite discussions.
To date, neither side is willing to specify what accommodations it's willing to make, or in the case of China, what it is specifically that it doesn't like about the current set of arrangements in the Western Pacific. China has never answered what it is that it would like to be able to achieve that it can't achieve under the current set of arrangements.
After China, President Obama heads to Myanmar, also known as Burma, where he will meet with Myanmar's leaders and the head of the opposition, Aung San Suu Kyi, seen here on an earlier visit. At the East Asia Summit and at a meeting with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, Mr. Obama will deal with questions on U.S. commitments to refocus its military forces to Asia. The trip ends in Brisbane, Australia. Mr. Obama will take part in a G20 summit, where he plans to speak on the United States' continuing role as a leader in Asia. Luis Ramirez, VOA News, at the White House.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, one of Burkina Faso's musical voice of dissent. We'll talk live with Smokey about his art, his hopes for his country. We'll be right back. Serge Martin Bambara, a.k.a. Smokey, has been a figurehead of the music scene in Burkina Faso for over 10 years. He has received numerous awards, including Best African Hip Hop Artist at the 2010 Kora Music Awards. Smokey's music is a blend of traditional rhythm and hip hop. He uses his music to entertain as well as raise awareness about political and social issues in his country. He was a key voice among the youth during the demonstrations that led to President Blaise Compaoré's fall. Here is Smokey with singer Dédé in the song Faut pas chauffer le chauffeur.
Yeah, chauffeur ya dougalema. Chauffer le chauffeur, faudrait pas chauffer le chauffeur.
J'ai dû batailler comme
chaos, ça pour en arriver là. 40 ans d'expérience, c'est pas rien, mais voilà. Je m'appelle Amado, depuis que je suis chauffeur. Quel que soit le taco, j'en ai vu de toutes les couleurs. J'ai transporté des gens, des mobilettes, des casseroles, des poulaillers entiers. Avec tout ça, je caracole. Pas un seul témoignage de considération pour mes horaires de forçat, mon salaire de paria. Amado par ici et Amado par là. Jour et nuit, je suis responsable des passagers et des biens. Amado va plus vite, Amado ralentit, Amado freine. C'est pourtant moi le capitaine, un capitaine qui peine, mais toujours qui vous ramène à bon port, sans vous parler de ces problèmes. Mais aujourd'hui, je...
And joining us via phone from Burkina Faso is Burkinabe music sensation Smokey. Smokey, welcome to Africa 54.
Well, thank you very much.
Tell us about this song, Faut pas chauffer le chauffeur, which means don't trouble the driver. Is it a show of solidarity to all public transportation drivers?
The story of the song is a syndicate association called me, Driver Syndicate Association, called me and they wanted me to talk about their problems. Because most of the time people used to talk about the bad drivers, but
yes.
They got a lot of problems, too much hours, for example, of driving, 15 hours a day. They have no insurance, no health, ATC. So I was prepared to talk about that. So I did this song to tell people that it's very difficult. It's a very bad job, very, very
difficult. Yes, indeed. Indeed.
Okay.
Now let's talk about your advocacy. Actually, you very much a voice in Burkina Faso. You were an important voice in the people's movement that protested against President Compaoré. Why was it important for you to get involved and start the Citizen Broom movement, which is Le Ballet du Peuple that you started last year?
Yeah, we've been created this movement because there is a lot of part of the young people in Burkina Faso doesn't anymore trust in politicians, and a lot of social civil society, because even syndicates, President Compaoré was in power since 27 years, and it's too much. And there were a lot of people did a deal with this president, to stay in this power. So it was very important for us to give another choice to the population, another choice to the young generation. That's why we did this. We've been created this movement with my brother, another singer called Samskalja. And then Balance is a movement with a lot of there is some other structures. It's a kind of coalition, with young people structures.
Okay.
And we
Okay, very quickly before we finish, because we're getting ready to wrap up, but what are your hopes for Burkina Faso after President Compaoré? And what's in your future for Smokey? Is it politics or music? What do you see in the future? Very quickly.
I think the people took the power. The people gave this power to the military momently, just to make the transition possible, for the civil. So our mission is not finished yet because we need to go to election, democratic election, and transparency. Trust me,
okay.
if we wanted the power before, we could take it because.
All right, Smokey. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there, and that's all the time we have. We'll have time for more in the future. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to more music from Smokey. That was Smokey joining us on Africa 54. Still to come on the show, an Oscar-winning star welcomes a baby daughter. But first, a recap of Friday's headlines.
Ce qui nous préoccupe, c'est que nous parvenons à un consensus. Je crois que
Time now for What's Trending on Africa 54. Iron Man star Robert Downey Jr. took to Facebook to announce the birth of a daughter. After 9 months of intensive development, Team Downey is pleased to announce our 2014 Fall-Winter project. The actor wrote in a post. Avery Rowell Downey is the second child for the Oscar-winning actor and his wife, Susan, a film producer.
It's a commitment.
Next up, Buzz Lightyear and Sheriff Woody are coming back to the big screen. Disney Pixar announced it plans to produce Toy Story 4 with a release date in June 2017. Pixar chief John Lasseter will direct the film. Lasseter directed the first 2 Toy Story films and says his team has come up with a new idea for the franchise that he can't stop thinking about. He says the 4th Toy Story installment will open a new chapter in the lives of Woody, Buzz, and their playful pals. And finally, the new Star Wars movie has a name. The movie, previously known only as Episode 7, has been dubbed The Force Awakens. Disney says principal photography has wrapped up on the J.J. Abrams directed sequel. The shoot was one of the most closely followed productions in recent memory, with constant rumors emanating from the tightly guarded set. Star Wars The Force Awakens will be released in December 2015. And that's what's trending today. The Transworld radio station in Lilongwe, Malawi is playing a critical role in empowering the nation's youth through the power of radio. Sponsored by the Young Politician Union, Power to the Youth, a popular call-in radio program is generating a huge buzz in the country. VOA's Pauline Dio has the story.
If you're listening to us and
Trans World Radio Africa has grown into a broadcasting network airing programs in over 65 languages and dialects to more than 40 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. In Malawi, the station has opened its doors to the Young Politicians Union, an inter-party youth organization that provides a forum for youth participation in political leadership and the decision-making process. Hosted by a popular freelancer journalist, Peter Jegwa Kumwenda, Power to the Youth is enabling the youth across Malawi to voice their concerns.
Well, the owners of the program are an organization calling themselves Young Politicians Union. They decided that one of the ways in which they were going to interact with their members was through having a radio show. And so they were looking for a journalist who could put together a show for them, produce and present it.
Young Malawians have the opportunity to discuss on air issues that are important to them, such as national events that have a bearing on their lives or any initiatives that may affect the youth within Malawi. Clement Makua is the National Director of Young Politicians Union. He says the organization attracts young people from different political parties.
It is very encouraging to note now that after engaging most of young people, they have now started coming out to engage their elected leaders, demanding accountability from them. So I think that's an aspect that we may wish to advance across the country so that people get their leaders accountable.
On this day, Linda Harawa, Secretary General of the Youth Conservative Forum, was a studio guest on Power to the Youth. She was appealing to the youth to volunteer in their communities for the month of November.
We're trying to organize a voluntary youth service month, and we'll be engaged in a number of activities. We'll do school outreach programs, we'll do construction and rehabilitation, and we'll launch it in Star. We are trying to mobilize young people. We are trying to engage different stakeholders, including the minister, to share the ideas we have. And a lot of young people, a lot of people who we have engaged so far are very excited about this initiative.
Chikondi Violet Miozi is the Administrative Secretary of the Young Politicians Union. She uses the program to empower young girls. She says pushing for positive change, especially for women and girls, has not been easy.
Our focus is to empower these women, to give them access to education, to give them access to these positions so that they should take part in issues affecting their lives.
Across the continent, most programs are funded primarily by external donor countries. church organizations, and international development agencies. In this particular case, TWR Malawi is giving the youth a free airtime. Victor Kawanga is the National Director, Trans World Radio Malawi.
Well, it's largely in the broader context of recognizing the role young people play in the country, in the place of initially building them up into leadership capacities. So TWR, as a media organization, we decided that we should provide a platform to engage young people so that they could be exposed to issues of politics.
The Young Politicians Union has over 3,000 registered members nationwide. They are continuing to encourage the youth to nurture their political ambitions, sensitize the youth on principles of good governance, human rights, and the dangers of corruption. Reporting for VOA News, Paul Ndiho in Lilongwe, Malawi.
It's Friday, and that means it's time for the sunny side of sports. Welcome, Sonny Young.
Thank you, Lenore, and sporty greetings once again to our Africa 54 viewers. Let's begin with boxing. Filipino star Manny Pacquiao will fight American Chris Algieri November 22nd in Macau, China. At stake will be the Pac-Man's WBO welterweight title. With just a couple of weeks until the bout, Pacquiao has been training under the watchful eye of his Hall of Fame trainer, Freddie Roach. The Pac-Man will celebrate his 36th birthday in December, and some are wondering how much longer he'll stay in the fight game. Pacquiao says right now he's not ready to hang up the gloves.
Retiring boxing, of course, automatically we cannot stay long in boxing. There's a certain time that, but retiring boxing not in my mind right now because I can still fight.
I can still fight. Meanwhile, undefeated American Chris Algieri is looking forward to the biggest fight of his career, and he's confident about beating Pacquiao.
On November 22nd, it's not going to be my Rocky-esque performance that's going to win the day. It's going to be my smart technical boxing skills and my strategy and my mental and physical preparation leading up to November 22nd. So that being said, I'm looking to be the new WBO welterweight world champion.
American boxer Chris Algieri, who will fight Manny Pacquiao November 22nd for the WBO welterweight championship. I'm VOA Sonny Young, and that's the sunny side of sports. Lenore?
Hey, Sonny, guess what? I know a thing or two about boxing, so watch out. Thanks, Sonny. Watch for the sunny side of sports every Monday and Friday on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's Newswords. Listen to this story for the word that means a government.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called it a historic mistake.
So Israel is not bound by this agreement. We cannot and will not allow a regime that calls for the destruction of Israel to obtain the means to achieve this goal.
Regime is another word for government. Usually it has a negative meaning. Regimes can be like dictatorships because often they allow few freedoms.
In our news story, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu criticizes Iran's government when he calls it a regime. Now, the next time you hear the word regime,
you will know what it means.